Welcome into another episode of Vendetta Sports Media's NBA previews. I'm Jerry Walker, and alongside me today is Jarrod Prosser. And today we're going to be talking about the Milwaukee Bucks, one of the league's best teams. The NBA champions 2 years ago had a little bit of a disappointing season compared to what they were expecting to do as reigning champions. But how did it go last year for the Bucks?
Jerry, I think that the Bucks will look at the 2022 season as a lost opportunity. As you mentioned, reigning champions, knocked out in the second round in 7 games to Boston. They finished third in the conference, so in a 2-3 matchup, and 7 games, extremely tight. Despite losing Brook Lopez about seemingly 15 seconds into game 1, they still had a strong regular season. And to be honest, Boston, such an uneven season, a brilliant season at the end, a bad season at the start, Miami up and down, Brooklyn up and down, Philly doing Philly things. It looks like Milwaukee could come through and had timed their run really well to perhaps storm through the East once again. But then Chris Middleton went down, and that really hurt them. Losing their primary, as good as Giannis is in late game situations where you need a bucket, the ball is often in Chris Middleton's hands. So losing him, that really hurt them. It's a sliding doors moment, this, but if Middleton doesn't get hurt, you would assume that Milwaukee would have been able to take one of those 4 losses and turn it into a win against Boston. And if that happens, the Bucks seem to have the Heat's measure. So you would expect they could have gotten through to the finals. And then how do the Warriors, as much as Milwaukee would have to handle Steph, they do have Drew Holiday. Wiggins can't handle Giannis. So there is potential that, this was a second round loss this last season, but they were one badly timed injury to the wrong person away from potentially another ring. So I think this will be a lost opportunity, this one. But if my auntie had balls, she'd be my uncle. You don't get by on ifs. Ultimately, it's a second round loss.
Ifs, cans, and buts don't really cut it in the sports world, but things that do cut it are making some offseason moves, reloading that team. We saw the Bucks re-signed quite a few players, but did they make any other moves and bring anybody new in?
Well, with limited cap flexibility, the Bucks really have no choice but to take care of their own. So to that end, Portis, Connaughton both re-signed. They're no-brainers. They're key rotation pieces. Serge Ibaka was a really risky one for me. I'm not sure what he has left. Same with Wes Matthews. Been a good player for a long time, Wes Matthews, but he's 35 now, I think. Javon Carter was an interesting one. Very good defensive guard. Defensively, he's not quite Drew Holiday's level, but he's not far off it. Offensively, though, me, aged 44, with no knees and a bad back, I might be a better offensive point guard at NBA level than Javon Carter. I'm certainly a better shooter than him. So interesting signing, that one for me. If he can develop any sort of jump shot, which a point guard needs in Milwaukee, considering the amount of time that big three have the ball, then that's a big signing. If he's not, he's going to be purely a one end of the court player. Outside of the players they re-signed, they brought in Luka Vildoza as a free agent. They brought in Marjon Beecham, in the draft, who will be a little while away from contributing, but I like the value of the pick at 24. And they picked up Joe Ingles as a free agent from the Blazers. Now, clearly I'm Australian. I'm very partial to Ingles. I used to watch him when he first came through as a pro over here when he was 17, 18. And wonderful player, but he is 35. He's coming off an ACL. He won't be available until at least January. And given that his speed and athleticism were marginal at NBA level at best, he's going to give the Bucks playmaking. He's going to give them shooting at least rather than scoring. But I'm wondering whether he will have enough to survive at the defensive end, whether whatever speed and agility he has just gone now and he turns into an admittedly sweet shooting, but still a statue. So that one was a little bit of a risk to me.
Yeah, I agree. You got to play both ends, and I don't know if Joe Ingles will be able to play both ends at an NBA level that he's needed, especially with the team around him, where this is a team built to win right now. As we saw 2 years ago, they very well can do it again this year. We'll touch on all that later.
And I really hope he is, but there's just something inside me that nags and says, he's going to get played off the court, which is a real shame.
34, 35, coming off an ACL injury.
Yeah.
Not a good situation for Joe Ingles. But
it's risky.
If he can return to the way he had kind of been playing and at least get back on defense and cover up guys, his shooting is still as pure as it gets in the league. And still that's something that the Bucks have needed, is that 3-point shooting. So he adds a very good offensive threat, but it's the defensive end that's really that big question mark surrounding him.
Yeah, as much as there are players who can cover him, I just get the feeling that he's going to be just awful defensively this year, and that breaks my heart to say that, but I just can't shake that feeling.
Yeah. I think move on to the next chapter. There's only really one player who is the key player for the Bucks, I would say, and I'll let you do the talking on that, but who is
it's my main man, Jordan Nwora.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, sorry, I've read the wrong bit. Giannis. Yeah, Giannis. Look, what's left to be said? I literally put it in an article for Vendetta maybe 3 years ago that when it's all said and done, Giannis is going to be a top 5 player in the history of the league. I am that high on him. And this was before he had won either of his MVPs, so that I was prepared to put that on paper. I think already if he just plateaus from here and plays that until he's 33 and then starts to fade, he's a top 10 player all time.
Oh,
he's just that good. He's an irresistible force at both ends of the floor. He's shooting more free throws than ever. He shot close to 12 a game last season. And whilst people think he's a bit of a liability there, he shot 72% last season. Much improved. And 72%, particularly on that volume, is perfectly fine. Like you would happily have a big man like that who's not a renowned shooter hitting close to 3/4 of his free throws. His mid-range game, off the bounce especially, is better than ever. It's still not great, but it's better than ever. His playmaking always improves year on year. And defensively, people talk about the versatility of Draymond, of Ben Simmons, of Marcus Smart, of Bam. I still think that when it comes down to it, I still think that Giannis might be the most versatile defender in the league. It's not just that he can defend 1 through 5. He can defend every type of player 1 through 5. If you want to throw a low post behemoth down in the low block on him, he's strong enough and vertical enough that he can hold them up. If you want to put a jitterbug guard in front of him, De'Aaron Fox on the drive or something like that, he can stay in front of him. He can literally stop every type of player in a one-on-one scenario. Like, he's just the rarest of rare beasts.
Yeah, and that's why he's a defensive player of the year candidate year in, year out now, and an MVP candidate as well, is because he's able to guard those 1 through 5. And he has used such a long wingspan and such good athletic ability that he's a shot blocking threat, a steal threat. He could lead the offense down the court. He can really do everything you need to ask for him. And that's why he went back-to-back MVPs and led the team to a championship.
I think he should have won 3 straight, to be honest. I think there was a little bit of voter fatigue in there for the first of Jokic's MVPs. That said, it's not like Jokic didn't deserve it. It was he was right there in the race. I would have gone Giannis. Absolutely would have gone Jokic last season, though. He was even better last season. But no, I he's clearly the star man, and we are watching one of the all-time greats in his prime right now.
Absolutely. But after Giannis, who's going to be that X factor? Who's going to step up and be that key player? Or
I don't think it's a particular player. My X factor for this team is age and, by extension, health. So, Giannis is in his prime. Bobby Portis is in his prime. Pat Connaughton will turn 30 through the season. But the rest of this team, the rest of the core players of this team are capital O old. Middleton, Lopez, Drew Holiday, Ingles that we mentioned, George Hill, Matthews. If they're not old, they're right on the precipice of being old. Middleton and Drew are probably the two that are still in late prime, and they're your second and third best players. But the rest of the rotation on the whole is on the downhill and a long way down that downhill. So Grayson Allen is another one I haven't mentioned who's part of the rotation. He's a bit younger, but he's as much as he starts, ultimately he's probably the ninth most important player on the team.
Absolutely.
So this, like how Coach Bud handles the rotations of these older guys is going to be really interesting. You don't want to have these older blokes cooked come April, May, June. We mentioned at the top, this team might have been a healthy Middleton away from a second championship. So how Coach Bud, someone who is famously inflexible, he's gotten better at it over the years, but he's still very much stuck to his ways. How he manages this will be really interesting. I mentioned Jordan Nwora in jest before, but I expect him to get quite a few more minutes this season, particularly knowing that Middleton might be close to breaking down. Nwora, 6'8", never met a shot he doesn't like, but he can damn well shoot the rock. Very, very good scorer, decent rebounder, decent defender. His decision making is, well, let's not sugarcoat it. His decision making is shithouse. He never quite knows when to pass or when to make the right pass or when to drive, when to pull back. But he's only going to get better at that with repetition. So I expect Nwora to be given a lot more minutes this year to help Middleton rest.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him. A player I'm kind of curious to see if we'll see any more minutes, just partially because of the family factor, is Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't think we'll see a ton of him, but he's just another guy who's not at that old yet. He's never really had much of an NBA career.
Yeah.
I think he's an interesting piece that could potentially come off the bench.
He's it's an interesting one. Like I think he's probably in the right spot in Milwaukee where he's your fourth or fifth big man. Some people either overrate him because his surname is Antetokounmpo, or they underrate him thinking he's only in the league because his name is Antetokounmpo. I think he's there on merit. And look, he's not a star. He's barely a role player. But he and Costas are both there, I think, on merit. They're end of bench players, but they've earned their spots. He's another one where I think he's a bit of a break glass in case of emergency type. But he comes in, he plays with energy, he does a job. It's Budenholzer being Budenholzer. He won't play in many minutes because he likes to lean on his rotations. But look, he's a decent player. He's sort of unfairly overrated or underrated by most, but I think he's a pretty decent player.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the depth chart. They have Bobby Portis as both the second string power forward and center, and I know they have Serge Ibaka, who you don't seem overly keen about because he's past his prime. So that really leaves, when you don't have Giannis and Brook Lopez on the court, which 90% of the time you will, but that leaves that opening for Bobby Portis and maybe Giannis to get in there together.
Yeah. Yeah, if you play bench units, what Bud usually does is he'll play Portis at the 4 with Lopez or Portis at the 5 with Giannis. Depending on the matchup, sometimes Giannis will play sort of as an offensive 5 to a degree. But because Portis can shoot, he often plays that Lopez role on offense, and he might step out the perimeter a bit and guard defensively. But ultimately Lopez is 30. I think he's 35 now, so they are going to have to limit his minutes. He looked brilliant after he came back, but he missed 50-odd games with a back injury. That's a worry for a giant of a man at his age. So, yeah, I think it's probably prudent, particularly in the first half of the season, to give Thanasis more minutes, but we'll see what happens. Budenholzer can be pretty inflexible at times.
Yeah, and I mean, on a team that has championship aspirations, you might not be wanting to rely on these guys who average maybe 5-6 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Looking ahead at this season, what are your expectations for the Milwaukee Bucks, record-wise and placement in the conference and playoffs?
Well, this is where I have a feeling that they won't lean on the Tanassises of the world, because losing in the manner they did last season, I think that the Bucks will want to go and win the conference. I think that they will. They've won a championship. They know the playoffs are ultimately what matter. But they might have been sitting there thinking, if we had home court in Game 7 against Boston, even without Middleton, would that have been enough? And would that have bought us enough time to get Middleton back on the floor? So I think the Bucks are going to leave nothing to chance. I think they will, at the very least, push for the top seed in the conference. But I do think they'll actually get it. I think at worst they'll get second in the conference, but I'm going to tip them for 56 games. So, 5-win improvement from last season. And I think they will take the top seed in the conference, and I think they will represent the East in the NBA Finals.
And do they win the NBA Finals?
Oh, gee, put me on the spot. Depends who they play. I honestly think they could take the Warriors. I think they'll definitely take down the Suns. The Nuggets will be an interesting one if the Nuggets make it. The Clippers, with all of that depth, will be interesting. I'd probably take the field against Milwaukee, but
depends on the match.
It's pretty tight. It's pretty tight. Milwaukee, for me, are probably the favorites for the championship.
Well, yeah, you heard it here, Milwaukee Bucks fans. Jarrod thinks the Milwaukee Bucks could be the championship favorites again this year. Wouldn't be a surprise to anybody. If you guys don't agree with that, let us know. Just as Jarrod Prosser, you can hit him up on Twitter at hey_it's_JP. I'm Jerry Walker. You can hit me on Twitter at JerryF007. And check us out. Check out the rest of our NBA previews on our Vendetta Sports Media YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button below. Check out our stories on the NBA. We're going to have all sorts of NBA coverage all season long. Thanks for listening in. Have a good one. We'll see you later.